There are nights when I lie awake and realize the ache in my chest isn't loneliness, it's recognition. The quiet understanding that something important was misunderstood for most of my life. My name is Margaret Ellis, and I'm 81 years old. And the moment I realized I loved the wrong way, my entire life didn't come when I was young or newly married or even in the middle years. It came much later, when there was almost nothing left to fix. For most of my life, I thought love meant holding everything together. I thought it meant endurance, sacrifice, and staying no matter how tired you became. I believed love was proven by how much discomfort you could tolerate without complaining, how much of yourself you could quietly set aside for the sake of harmony. That belief was praised in my generation, especially for women. We were taught that good love was steady and unremarkable, something you carried like a duty, rather than something you examined too closely. I married young at 21 to a man named Robert. He was kind, dependable, and serious in a way that made my parents relax the moment they met him. He worked hard, never raised his voice, and believed deeply in providing for a family. I mistook his reliability for emotional safety, and I mistook my own willingness to adapt for devotion. At the time, it felt right. It felt adult. It felt like love. In the early years, I told myself that love didn't need words. I cooked, cleaned, raised children, remembered birthdays, and kept track of everyone's needs before they even knew them themselves. I believed that anticipating someone's comfort was the purest form of affection. If I could prevent conflict, if I could smooth the rough edges before they became visible, then surely that meant I was loving well. But there was a quiet cost to that way of loving, and I didn't notice it at first because it accumulated slowly. I learned to swallow my disappointments before they became sentences. I learned to adjust my expectations until they were small enough to manage alone. I told myself that wanting more conversation, more tenderness, more curiosity about who I was beyond my roles was selfish. Good women didn't ask for too much. Loving women made things easier. Robert and I rarely argued, and people admired that. They said we were solid, stable, lucky. What they didn't see was that stability can sometimes be built on avoidance. We didn't fight because I rarely disagreed out loud, and he rarely asked questions that might disturb the calm. We lived side by side, efficient and coordinated, like partners running a business, rather than two people growing older together. The children came, and I poured myself into motherhood. It gave my love somewhere visible to go. I could nurture without restraint, worry without apology, and feel needed in a way that felt safe. I told myself that this was fulfillment, and in many ways it was. But even then, there were moments late at night when I felt strangely unseen, as if I were performing a role very well, while the person underneath waited quietly for acknowledgement. The years passed the way they always do, faster than you expect and slower than you'd like. The children grew up and left. Robert retired. The house became quieter, and without the constant motion of caring for others, I began to hear my own thoughts more clearly. That's when the discomfort started to speak louder. I realized that I didn't really know how to ask for emotional closeness, and Robert didn't know how to offer it without being asked. I tried in small ways. I would say things like, "Do you ever wonder if we've changed?" Or, "Do you miss how we used to talk?" He would look at me with confusion, not unkindness, just genuine uncertainty, and say, "I think we're fine, Margaret. We've had a good life." And I would nod, because disagreeing felt like an accusation I didn't know how to make. Then came the illness. It wasn't sudden. It arrived politely with symptoms that could be explained away until they couldn't. When Robert was diagnosed, I stepped back into a role I understood well. I managed medications, appointments, meals, and visitors. I was calm, organized, and endlessly capable. People told me I was strong, and I accepted the compliment because it fit the version of love I knew how to give. But illness has a way of stripping away routine. And in the quiet moments, when it was just the two of us, I felt a growing urgency. I realized there were things I wanted to say that I had postponed for decades, not because they were unimportant, but because they felt dangerous. I wanted to tell him that I had loved him faithfully, but not honestly, that I had given care instead of vulnerability, that I had been afraid to want more because I didn't know how to survive disappointment. One afternoon, near the end, we were sitting together in the living room. The light was soft, and the house felt suspended in time. He looked at me and said, "You've been good to me, Margaret. I hope you know that." And something inside me shifted. I realized that being good to someone is not the same as being known by them. That was the moment. The moment I understood what had been missing. Love, real love, isn't measured by how much you endure or how quietly you adapt. It's measured by how willing you are to be seen, even when it risks discomfort. I had loved Robert by protecting him from my inner life, and in doing so, I had protected myself from rejection. I had chosen peace over intimacy, and I called it devotion. I didn't say all of this to him. I wish I had. Instead, I held his hand and told him I loved him, which was true, but incomplete. He died a few weeks later, and the house became very still. Grief arrived, but underneath it was something else, something sharper. It was the realization that I had spent a lifetime loving in a way that felt safe, but not fully alive. In the years since, I've had time to think, time to replay conversations and notice what wasn't said. I've come to understand that love isn't just about giving, it's about allowing. Allowing someone to see your doubts, your unmet needs, your disappointments. Allowing yourself to take up emotional space without apologizing for it. I don't blame myself the way I once did. I see now that I loved the only way I knew how. I was shaped by a world that rewarded silence and called it strength. But knowing the reason doesn't erase the regret. It simply makes it clearer. If you're listening to me and you're younger than I am, I want you to hear this gently. If your love feels calm but empty, if you pride yourself on being easy to live with, ask yourself what parts of you have been edited out to maintain that ease. Love doesn't ask you to disappear. It asks you to arrive, fully and imperfectly. I loved my entire life, but I loved carefully. And it took me 81 years to understand that careful love can keep you safe, but it can also keep you alone. If you can, choose differently. Choose honesty while there is still time for it to matter.